Hello, everyone. Before you spend another coin from your pocket, watch this carefully. One ordinary-looking coin could secretly be worth thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to the right collector. In the next few moments, I'll reveal a rare coin with surprising history, hidden features, and the reasons collectors are searching for it today. Stay until the end, because the final detail could completely change the way you look at your spare change. First coin, the 1950 to 1953 amperes piece that collectors often come across in listings claiming extreme rarity, even reaching unbelievable figures like $600,000 in today's auction market. Yet the reality behind this coin is very different and far more important for every collector to understand before making any judgment or investment. Because officially, the United States Mint has never produced a circulating $1 coin featuring Millard Fillmore for the years 1950 to 1953. And any such claim usually comes from misidentified tokens, fantasy pieces, or heavily altered coins that are not part of official U.S. currency production. However, these items still circulate in online auctions, where sellers describe them with terms like no mint mark, circulated condition, scratches present, and even edge damage to create an illusion of authenticity and age. And this is where many new collectors get misled into thinking they are looking at a genuine historical rarity, when in fact they are dealing with either privately minted metals or modern replicas that have no official monetary status. But the fascination still continues because Millard Fillmore, as a historical figure, being the 13th President of the United States, does attract interest from collectors of presidential memorabilia. And this interest is often used to market fantasy coins that combine historical names with incorrect denominations and years to increase perceived value, especially when listings mention extreme conditions like heavy circulation, visible scratches across the surface, and edge damage that supposedly came from decades of handling, which in reality are artificially added effects in many cases to make the piece look more legitimate and aged than it actually is. And when we examine the valuation claims of up to $600,000, it becomes even more critical to understand that no verified auction record from major numismatic institutions supports such a price for this type of coin. Instead, what we see are speculative listings on online platforms where sellers attempt to attract attention by attaching unrealistic values, and sometimes buyers unfamiliar with authentic coin grading systems may believe that rarity and damage together somehow increase value, when in fact professional grading standards from recognized services like PCGS or NGC clearly show that authenticity, metal composition, mint origin, and documented historical issuance are the key factors that determine value, not just appearance or story attached to the coin. And even in circulated condition with scratches and edge damage, an authentic U.S. dollar coin must still be officially minted and recorded. Otherwise, it remains a token or replica with minimal collectible value, often only worth a few dollars to novelty collectors. And this is why experts always advise verifying such coins before any purchase, especially when claims include no mint mark, combined with impossible date ranges like 1950 to 1953 for a presidential dollar that never existed in production history. And while the story of Millard Fillmore himself remains historically significant, his appearance on currency is largely limited to commemorative medals or educational collectibles rather than official circulation coinage, which further confirms that any high-value auction claim attached to this specific description should be treated with caution. And serious collectors often warn that edge damage and scratches do not transform a non-existent coin into a rare treasure. Instead, they usually indicate handling of a modern piece or an intentionally aged replica. So when you see listings promoting this so-called dollar coin at extreme prices, it is essential to cross-check with trusted numismatic databases, auction records, and grading authorities, because the true value of such items is not in exaggerated numbers, but in their verified authenticity. And without that verification, even claims of $600,000 remain nothing more than marketing hype designed to attract quick attention, rather than reflect real market demand, making it one of the most important examples for beginners to learn how misinformation spreads in the coin-collecting world, and why careful research always comes before any investment decision. Next coin, the 1797 to 1809, especially in circulated condition, with no mint mark, visible scratches, and even edge damage. They often come across dramatic auction claims suggesting values as high as $620,000 in today's market. But the first important fact every collector must understand is that no official U.S. mint dollar coin was ever produced featuring a portrait of John Adams during that time period, because early American silver dollars from the late 18th and early 19th century used designs like the draped bust Liberty, not presidential portraits, and presidential faces did not appear on circulating U.S. coins until much later in American numismatic history, which means any coin described as a John Adams $1 from 1797 to 1809 is either a fantasy piece, a privately made token, or a modern commemorative item incorrectly labeled for attention in online auctions. Yet these coins still attract massive interest because collectors are naturally drawn to early American history and the founding era, and John Adams, being the second president of the United States, adds emotional and historical appeal that sellers often use to increase perceived value even when the coin itself has no official mint documentation or government issuance. And when listings describe circulated condition with scratches across the surface and edge damage, they are usually trying to simulate age and authenticity, because genuine early U.S. silver dollars, such as those minted by the United States Mint in Philadelphia, are already extremely rare and highly documented, and they do not feature presidential portraits, but instead classical Liberty designs that reflect the artistic style of the early Republic. So when someone sees a coin labeled as 1797 to 1809 John Adams $1, it is essential to recognize that this combination of date range, portrait attribution, and denomination does not match any verified mint record, and professional grading services like PCGS and NGC do not certify such pieces as genuine circulating currency. However, the fascination continues in online marketplaces where sellers combine historical names, dramatic damage descriptions like heavy scratches and edge wear, and exaggerated auction prices to create the illusion of rarity, sometimes pushing values as high as $620,000, even though no reputable auction house has ever confirmed such a sale for this type of coin. And what actually drives real value in numismatics is not just age or damage, but verified authenticity, mint origin, metal content, survival population, and historical documentation, meaning a real early silver dollar from the draped bust series, even in circulated condition, can be valuable, but still follows strict grading standards and historical accuracy, whereas a misidentified or fantasy coin cannot reach such extreme valuations in legitimate markets, and edge damage in authentic coins usually lowers value rather than increasing it because collectors prefer well-preserved examples with strong details and minimal wear. Yet in online listings, these flaws are sometimes highlighted as proof of circulation to justify inflated pricing, which can mislead beginners who are not familiar with early American coin history. And understanding this difference is critical because the United States did not produce presidential portrait coins in the 18th century, and John Adams himself is more commonly associated with historical documents, portraits in museums, and commemorative medals rather than circulating currency. So when evaluating any coin that claims association with him in dollar denomination from 1797 to 1809, the safest approach is to compare it with verified catalog records of early U.S. silver dollars, check certification from recognized grading companies, and avoid relying on online auction descriptions alone, because the gap between real numismatic value and speculative listing prices can be extremely large. And while the idea of a $620,000 coin sounds exciting, the reality is that such figures are usually marketing tactics rather than confirmed sales, making this type of coin a clear example of why research, authentication, and historical accuracy are the most important tools in coin collecting rather than emotional appeal or exaggerated condition stories. Next coin, the 1809 to 1817, especially described as no mint mark, circulated with scratches and fine condition, and then see an auction claim reaching around $640,000. It immediately creates excitement, but also confusion, because the first thing that must be clearly understood is that no official U.S. mint $1 coin was ever produced featuring the portrait of James Madison during his presidency, and in fact, circulating U.S. silver dollars from that early 19th century period did exist, but they used symbolic liberty designs rather than presidential portraits, since the tradition of placing presidents on U.S. coinage came much later in American numismatic history. So any coin described as a James Madison $1, dated 1809 to 1817, is not part of an officially documented mint series and is most likely a fantasy piece, privately issued token, or modern commemorative creation that has been incorrectly marketed as a rare historical coin. Yet despite this reality, these coins continue to appear in online listings where sellers describe them in dramatic terms such as circulated condition, surface scratches, and fine grading with edge wear, all of which are used to make the item appear aged and authentic, even though true early American silver dollars that actually exist from that era, such as the draped bust and capped bust series, are already extremely rare, heavily studied, and well documented by professional numismatists, and they never include presidential portraits, which makes the connection to James Madison historically inaccurate when applied to circulating currency. However, the appeal remains strong because James Madison was the fourth president of the United States and a key founding father involved in drafting the U.S. Constitution, so his name carries significant historical weight that sellers often use to attract attention and justify extremely high prices like $640,000 in today's auction market, even though no verified record from major auction houses such as Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers confirms any such sale for a coin matching this exact description. And when evaluating claims like this, it is important to understand how real coin value is determined, because genuine numismatic value depends on factors such as official mint production, survival population, historical documentation, metal composition, and certified grading from recognized services. rather than just appearance, damage, or storytelling. So when a coin is described as circulated with scratches and fine condition, that alone does not create rarity. In fact, in most authentic cases, heavy wear and surface damage reduce value significantly because collectors prefer coins with sharp details and minimal environmental damage. Yet in online marketplaces, these same imperfections are sometimes presented as proof of age and authenticity, which can mislead inexperienced buyers into believing that damage increases value, when in reality professional grading systems clearly separate genuine early US silver dollars from fantasy or misattributed pieces. And another important point is that during 1809 to 1817, the United States Mint primarily produced silver dollars and smaller denominations featuring Liberty designs, not presidential portraits, meaning any coin showing James Madison in that style is not consistent with official US coinage of the era. And while commemorative medals featuring presidents do exist and can be Constitution, so his name carries significant historical weight that sellers often use to attract attention and justify extremely high prices like $640,000 in today's auction market, even though no verified record from major auction houses such as Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers confirms any such sale for a coin matching this exact description. And when evaluating claims like this, it is important to understand how real coin value is determined, because genuine numismatic value depends on factors such as official mint production, survival population, historical documentation, metal composition, and certified grading from recognized services, rather than just appearance, damage, or storytelling. So when a coin is described as circulated with scratches and fine condition, that alone does not create rarity. In fact, in most authentic cases, heavy wear and surface damage reduce value significantly because collectors prefer coins with sharp details and minimal environmental damage. Yet in online marketplaces, these same imperfections are sometimes presented as proof of age and authenticity, which can mislead inexperienced buyers into believing that damage increases value, when in reality professional grading systems clearly separate genuine early US silver dollars from fantasy or misattributed pieces. And another important point is that during 1809 to 1817, the United States Mint primarily produced silver dollars and smaller denominations featuring Liberty designs, not presidential portraits, meaning any coin showing James Madison in that style is not consistent with official US coinage of the era. And while commemorative medals featuring presidents do exist and can be collectible, they do not carry the same value structure as genuine circulated currency, especially not in the hundreds of thousands of dollars unless they are extremely rare, authenticated, and historically significant with verified provenance. So when you see listings promoting a James Madison $1 coin with extreme valuation claims, it is essential to approach them with careful research, compare them to verified numismatic references, and check certification databases before assuming legitimacy, because the gap between real market value and speculative online pricing can be very large. And while the idea of owning a coin connected to a founding father like James Madison is exciting, true collector value comes only from authenticity and documented mint history, not from invented combinations of dates, portraits, and conditions, making this type of coin a clear example of why education and verification are the most powerful tools in coin collecting before accepting any high-value auction claim as real. Next coin, 1853 to 1857. Especially described as no mint mark, circulated condition, scratches, and very fine grade, with an auction value reaching around $650,000. It often creates strong excitement, but it also requires careful correction because this exact description does not match any officially issued U.S. $1 coin. Since the United States Mint during the mid-19th century did not produce circulating dollar coins featuring the portrait of Franklin Pierce, and instead silver dollars of that era were part of established Liberty design series, such as the seated Liberty dollar, which carried symbolic imagery rather than presidential portraits, and therefore any coin labeled as a Franklin Pierce $1 from 1853 to 1857 is not a verified mint product, but is more likely a fantasy token, privately struck metal, or misidentified collectible that has been marketed with exaggerated historical association to increase attention and perceived value. Yet these items still appear frequently in online marketplaces where sellers use descriptive terms like circulated, surface scratches, and very fine condition to suggest authenticity and age, even though real USS. Silver dollars from the 1850 already have well-documented production records, mint marks, and grading histories that collectors and experts rely on for valuation. And it is important to understand that Franklin Pierce, the 14th President of the United States, served from 1853 to 1857 amperes period when U.S. coinage followed strict design standards that did not include presidential portraits on circulating currency, so any coin claiming both his portrait and that exact denomination and date range immediately falls outside official numismatic records. And when auction listings attach extreme values like $650,000 to such pieces, it is usually based on speculative marketing rather than verified sales data from recognized auction houses, because in legitimate numismatics, value is determined by authenticity, rarity within documented series, mint origin, historical significance, and condition certified by professional grading services, not simply by damage patterns or descriptive storytelling. And when a coin is described as circulated with scratches and still in very fine condition, that typically indicates moderate wear on a genuine coin, but in authentic grading systems, such wear usually lowers the value compared to mint state examples, meaning that scratches and surface marks do not create additional worth, but instead reflect usage over time, while edge damage can further reduce collector appeal unless the coin is extremely rare and historically confirmed. However, in the case of fantasy or misattributed coins, these imperfections are often highlighted in listings to simulate authenticity and justify inflated pricing, which can mislead inexperienced buyers who may assume that historical names automatically translate into high monetary value. But professional numismatics separates collectible history from manufactured or commemorative items that were never part of official circulation. And during the 1850s, U.S. silver dollars, such as the Seated Liberty series, were minted primarily in Philadelphia, New Orleans, and San Francisco, and these coins are catalogued extensively with known mint marks and surviving population estimates, none of which include any presidential portraits or direct association with Franklin Pierce on circulating dollar coins. So when evaluating a coin with this description, the most important step is to verify it against official mint records, compare it with certified examples from reputable grading companies, and review auction results from established numismatic institutions, because without that verification, claims of $650,000 remain speculative and not grounded in documented market history. And while collectors are often drawn to coins that connect them emotionally to American presidents and historical eras, Real value in coin collecting always depends on proven authenticity and historical accuracy rather than imaginative combinations of dates, names, and conditions, making this type of listing a strong reminder that careful research and expert validation are essential before accepting any high-value claim in the numismatic market. Next coin, 1789 to 1797, especially described as no mint mark, circulated condition, scratches on the surface, and fine grade preservation, and then see an auction claim reaching around $660,000. It immediately creates a sense of historical importance, but the first and most critical fact that must be understood is that no official United States $1 coin was ever issued featuring the portrait of George Washington during that exact time period, because although Washington was the first president of the United States and served from 1789 to 1797 early U.S. Coinage did not use presidential portraits at all, and instead relied on symbolic designs such as liberty figures, eagles, and classical imagery inspired by European engraving traditions, meaning any coin described as a Washington $1 from 1789 to 1797 is not part of an officially documented U.S. mint issue and is most likely a fantasy piece, commemorative token, or modern reproduction that has been incorrectly labeled or marketed for attention. Yet despite this fact, such coins continue to appear in online auction listings where sellers use dramatic descriptions like circulated condition, visible scratches, and surface wear in fine condition to create an impression of authenticity and historical aging, even though genuine early American silver dollars from the late 18th century, such as the flowing hair dollar of 1794-1795, and the draped bust dollar series that followed, are already extremely rare, highly documented, and carefully studied by numismatists. And they do not include presidential portraits, which makes the combination of Washington's image with a $1 coin from the 1789 to 1797 range historically inaccurate when applied to circulating currency. However, the fascination with such listings is understandable because George Washington is one of the most iconic figures in American history, being the first president and a central leader in the founding of the United States, and his name alone carries strong emotional and historical value that sellers sometimes use to attract attention and justify extremely high price claims, such as $660,000 in today's auction market, even though no verified auction record from major numismatic institutions supports this valuation for any coin matching this exact description. And in professional coin collecting, value is determined by strict criteria, including verified mint production, documented rarity, metal composition, certified grading, and historical provenance, rather than just appearance or narrative. So when a coin is described as circulated with scratches and fine surface condition, that typically indicates wear from handling in genuine coins, but in authentic grading systems, such wear usually reduces value compared to mint state examples, meaning that scratches and surface damage do not increase worth, but instead reflect normal aging or environmental exposure, and edgeware further impacts collector appeal unless the coin is an extremely rare and authenticated specimen. However, in online marketplaces, these same imperfections are sometimes presented as proof of age and legitimacy, which can mislead inexperienced collectors into believing that damage or wear increases value, when in reality, professional grading services like PCGS and NGC clearly distinguish between genuine historical coins and fantasy or commemorative pieces that were never part of official U.S. circulation, and during Washington's presidency, the United States Mint was in its earliest stages, producing limited silver coinage that followed symbolic designs rather than portraits, and the first official silver dollar, known as the flowing hair dollar, was issued in 1794 and 1795. But even those coins do not feature Washington's likeness, which confirms that any coin showing him in that denomination and date range does not align with historical mint records. So when evaluating such claims, it is essential to cross-check with verified numismatic references, examine certification records, and review legitimate auction results before accepting any high-value estimate. Because without authentication, claims of hundreds of thousands of dollars remain speculative and not grounded in real market data. And while the idea of owning a coin connected to George Washington is powerful and historically appealing, true collector value always depends on authenticity and documented mint history rather than imaginative design combinations or exaggerated auction narratives, making this type of coin an important example of why careful research, expert verification, and understanding of early U.S. coinage are essential for anyone interested in numismatics before believing any extreme valuation claims. Next coin, 1877 to 1881, especially described as no mint mark, circulated condition, scratches visible, and extra fine grade preservation. And then see an auction estimate reaching around $670,000. It naturally creates curiosity and excitement, but it is very important to separate historical fact from misleading market descriptions because there is no official United States $1 coin that features the portrait of Rutherford B. Hayes from that time period, since during the late 19th century the U.S. Mint produced silver dollars that followed traditional Liberty designs, such as the Morgan Dollar series, which began in 1878. But none of these circulating coins carried presidential portraits, and certainly not Hayes, even though he served as the 19th President of the United States from 1877 to 1881, and any coin described as a Rutherford B. Hayes' $1 from this era is therefore not an authentic, minted U.S. currency issue, but is instead most likely a fantasy piece, commemorative token, or modern replica that has been labeled in a way that creates confusion and increases perceived value. Yet these coins continue to appear in online listings where sellers use descriptive terms like circulated condition, scratches across the surface, and extra fine preservation to give the impression of age and legitimacy, even though genuine U.S. silver dollars from the late 1870s and early 1880s are part of well-documented series such as the Morgan Dollar, which is one of the most studied and collected coins in American numismatics. And these authentic coins do exist with no mint mark or various mint marks like O, S, CC, and P, depending on production location. But none of them feature presidential portraits, which makes any association with Hayes historically incorrect when applied to circulating dollar coins, and when sellers attach extremely high auction values, such as $670,000, to such items, it is typically based on speculative marketing rather than verified sales from recognized auction houses, because in real numismatic markets, value is determined by authenticity, rarity within a known series, mint origin, survival population, and certified grading by professional services, not simply by surface appearance or descriptive storytelling. So when a coin is labeled as circulated with scratches and extra fine condition, that grading description in authentic terms would indicate moderate wear with still visible detail. But in legitimate numismatics, such wear does not increase value. It generally positions the coin below mint state examples in pricing hierarchy, meaning that scratches and handling marks are signs of circulation rather than indicators of extreme rarity, and edge wear or surface damage typically lowers collector demand unless the coin is already extremely rare and historically documented. However, in online marketplaces, these imperfections are sometimes highlighted as evidence of authenticity and long-term circulation, which can mislead inexperienced collectors into believing that damage somehow adds value, when in reality, professional grading systems clearly differentiate between genuine historical coins and non-official tokens or commemorative pieces. And during Rutherford B. Hayes's presidency, the United States Mint was actively producing Morgan silver dollars beginning in 1878, which are highly collectible today, but are well catalogued and do not include presidential imagery, as the tradition of placing presidents on circulating coins did not become standard until the 20th century. So any coin claiming to combine Hayes's portrait with a $1 denomination from 1877 to 1881 does not align with official mint records, and this is why experts always recommend verifying such pieces through reputable grading companies like PCGS or NGC, and comparing them with documented auction results before accepting any high-value claim. Because without authentication, prices like $670,000 remain speculative and unsupported by verified market history. And while collectors are often attracted to coins that connect them with U.S. presidents and important historical periods, true numismatic value always depends on verified mint production and documented rarity rather than imaginative labeling or exaggerated online listings, making this type of coin a clear example of how important it is to understand early American coinage and rely on professional verification rather than emotional appeal when evaluating high-value claims in the coin-collecting world.